if you think long term, it's probably the best mechanism still today in which it can self-correct, things that may go wrong and go back, or at least have the discussion. And I think the most powerful thing on this is, and the DAO is just the same, is that it's not our role as much to try to sort of lead in the traditional sense, where we say, this is how you should do it, just do it, right? Which is sort of the traditional sort of top-down model. But rather, our role is to help sort of educate people to a level where they understand why you do it. So in other words, the role of a democracy is to bring the level of knowledge and education up to peer level so that we can all have a good sort of debate around this. The best defense of a functioning democracy is a high level of education. And in the case of Web3, we still need to educate a lot of people. People don't understand the space. What is a DAO? How does a token work? Why don't I get this much? How does it benefit? We're early in the process, and it's all part of our duty to help bring people to the level. And the incentives are large, and therefore we think a good reason to be educated as well.
Thank you, yeah. And Captain Trippy and Matt, community members, Alicia, who's building out ENS DAO, and Brandon from Cartan are all people who are seeing this day to day. And so, we're going to love to hear from them throughout this. Mari, I'd love to get a sense of maybe communicating even why this call was brought together, and bring a little bit about yourself as well, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey everyone, I'm Maria. I'm on the special counsel. And I'm a Bored Ape holder, and I've been part of the community for since almost the beginning, I think since April or May of last year. So I think the reason for this call and the reason that we brought everyone together here today is just to provide more transparency and visibility into the process, because I think there's a lot of things that seem to happen sort of behind the scenes, and there isn't necessarily an easy avenue or a way to communicate that with the entire community. And so part of the goal of this call was just bring more transparency and level set on sort of what the mission and vision is for the Ape Foundation and for ApeCoin. And then also to iterate, like Yat said, to iterate on that process, because the DAO is only a few months old. We have the opportunity to be flexible and to innovate and to try new things. And so part of the reason why we invited Matt, Captain Trippy, and Herb into this conversation was so that we could hear from the community and to make this a more holistic conversation where we can all sort of iterate and work on this together.
That's amazing. And I think part of the outcome is actually having some practical solutions. And Amy, I think, has been really at the forefront of really wanting to bring that to this conversation, is really communicate, help the process, but also then have some tangible takeaways.
Yeah, so I'm a person of action. And so one of the things that I'm really excited about here is actually thinking about our community as a way to activate a lot of other teams that may not have actually previously had any interaction with ApeCoin or the Bored Ape community to think about building on top of our ecosystem. So it's essentially like evangelizing builders into our ecosystem. And one of the areas I'm super excited to explore with folks here today is that, we have something like, over $3 billion of essentially like ApeCoin token to in the treasury, and a subset of that essentially for grants. And I think that there is so much that we as a community can do with this capital, and so very, very much excited to brainstorm ideas today, like in around areas that might be quite valuable to actually build on top of our ecosystem, and then maybe even brainstorm ideas on how to to share information and light up like other teams. I think like every single person in this community here can play that role. We have kind of on an individual basis as well. And so, yeah, looking forward to discussing that with folks.
Awesome. And Alexis, I know that you joined us, maybe just shedding a little bit for the community. I know that most people will know who you are, but really kind of conveying a little bit of what you see for the DAO, and we're wanting to talk a little bit about where it's at right now as well.
Sure. I mean, look, I probably best known for co-founding Reddit, but I've been, in the online community space since I was a kid, and these days spend my time investing out of a venture fund I started called 776. Don't mind my daughter in the background if you can hear her. But the big thing is, like much like Reddit circa 2005, I had a basic idea of what online communities were capable of. Because, like I said, these are all echoes of forums and message boards and Usenet and all sort of stuff. But we're in a similar state where, intellectually, I can think of a few of the ways this DAO could go. But what ultimately comes of it is really just going to be a factor of the energy and coordination and creativity of this community. And so, like, I'm grateful to be a part of this advisory council, like many of the folks up here. But I also am very aware of the fact that, like, we're stewards of a process that is bigger than us, and we're just trying to sort of help, just sort of do our best to nudge things in a sustainable, long term, great direction. But so much of the actual greatness that comes out of this DAO is going to come from the community, and it's going to be stuff that just one room full of people could never possibly come up with. And I also love the fact that, like, no one really has written the playbook for how these things should work. Even the most successful and prolific DAOs, and we've seen a range. Uh, even the most successful and effective ones still are very much like in the beta stages of what they're building. And so, wow, I feel like I'm as much a student as a quote unquote leader in this space, because I'm just trying to pay attention to what all the sort of best builders are doing, and try to come at everything with a pretty open mind, because that's how the best stuff's going to get built.
Yeah, thanks so much, Alexis. And actually, the backdrop of your daughter is amazing. As like this sort of like long term, like we are building for the young people, and those young people are going to be coming in, and so it's not lost on us, for all the parents or all the people who are just, staying up, who are making it here. Like this is everything for us, and we can't really. It's not lost on me and Alicia, who is building out one of those ecosystems. We'd love to hear a little bit about what you have experienced so far, and maybe shed some light on what you perceive or what you could see being helpful for the ApeCoin DAO as well.
Yeah, hey, everybody. So I'm Alicia.Ape, and I am helping build out the ENS DAO, which launched in November last year. So we're coming up to about 6 months, and it's been really interesting, and something that I guess like hearing talk about democracy and things like that, and that kind of bigger picture of what the vision is for DAOs, I think it's like important to keep front of mind. But I guess in the reality of building a DAO, I would say in like the first 12 to 24 months is what I would call like this beta stage for DAOs, just kind of like startups, is that being I guess like if I was to analogize like being like an athlete, like being on the balls of your feet rather than being flat-footed, and acknowledging that you really have to stay ready for anything, to be ready to iterate, as well as DAOs maturing in this space. Like DAO tooling is maturing even faster, to the point where there are things that didn't exist weeks ago. There are features that have been shipped, the day that, or being built the day that they're needed. And so this kind of stage that DAOs are in at the moment, I would say, in 2022, requires people who are, really adaptive and open-minded, and really, really internalize what it means to iterate and experiment. And I think that is kind of like the most important thing. So with ENS, in December, I put forward a proposal to have a working group structure. And so basically, the working group structure was based on our constitution, which a lot of people signed when they claimed ENS. And just actually 2 or 3 days ago, I put up an amendment proposal to those working group rules, kind of reflecting on the last 6 months. And, in 6 months again, I imagine that there will be more amendments. So I think it's this idea of starting somewhere, but I would say starting really boldly, and then kind of committing to constantly iterate and experiment. I would say that in terms of DAOs, I think it would be great to hear, from members of the Special Council, just kind of digging more into what the intention is with the ApeCoin DAO. And basically the way that I look at it kind of some spending time in the last couple of months with DAOs is that if you look at it as a spectrum, there are DAOs, say like Maker at one end with a core unit model. And I think of DAOs like that do work and kind of like build the product or the protocol, whatever it is. And then at the other end, I think you have DAOs like Uniswap, Aave, Synthetics, which are grants DAOs. And those are focused on, having the community come in, get grants to go and build, and kind of keep pushing for adoption and growth and all these sorts of things. ENS at the moment kind of falls somewhere in the middle, and that's very intentional. But I think it's really exciting. I know that I think that Matt is going to touch on some exciting developments that we've also been thinking about at ENS, specifically around like Nouns DAO. I don't know, Matt or Maria.
Really quickly, Alicia, I just want to ask one question, because like you have so much great experience with ENS, and like you've really been spearheading a lot of those DAO efforts. Like, what have you seen is like the biggest challenge that most DAOs have, or like the biggest fatal flaw that DAOs experience, just from what you've seen?
Oh, maybe this is it, which is the timeline of people kind of interacting with the DAO can be vastly different. And so the fact that we are in this like beta stage means that there is an opportunity for people to be especially extractive and kind of make the most of this phase of like a DAO finding its feet. And, when we talk about treasuries, with billions of dollars, there's a huge financial incentive to be involved. And I guess, so there's like things like managing incentives, whether they are financial or kind of long-term aligned with the community. And then I would just say like the timelines that people are thinking on. So with ENS, I think about decades. I feel like I freak people out when I say like how long term I'm thinking about, ENS as a protocol and how long it needs to exist. And so in the space of 6 months, it's like not a lot of time in terms of my timeline for the ENS DAO. But just like balancing that with the fact that the community needs to see progress, like everyone really wants to be involved. Bear markets and bull markets are potentially like very wild in crypto. And so, just like, and time is different here. So I think just like managing the different timelines that people are working on and trying to keep everyone happy, but also ultimately my North Star personally is to always build in the best interest of the protocol or the project, no matter what that is, and kind of getting people to at least acknowledge that that's the direction you're heading in, I think is difficult.
Yeah, thank you, Alicia. And I think what's lost maybe on all of us is that you're one of the people who's actually been able to navigate sort of the really big holders, but also being able to navigate sort of like individual holders and really be able to understand the framework for that DAO. And so really being able to connect and collect all of that has, I think, been something that we're trying to understand. And I think Cartan Group is really who has been doing that, or who has been contracted to do that currently.
Hey, Herb. Yeah, thank you. I think just to describe what Cartan does and kind of go over our role. So we're sort of the very boring behind the scenes back office folks that manage bank accounts, manage custody accounts. We write a lot of analysis work and do a lot of research on all the proposals that come in. We monitor all the conversations that are happening. We don't really take a perspective on whether it's a good proposal or not. We maintain independence. And so, everything kind of looks great. We just need it to kind of conform to a certain specification. And then we present that to the special counsel for their decision as to whether it wants to move forward into Snapshot or go back for reclassification with some more questions. Most of that work is pretty quiet, and I think it's an important role just to keep things going forward, but it's certainly not the star of the show. I would definitely say that the special counsel are the stars of the show, and make sure that anything that's coming forward is in the best interest of the community and for the community.
Thanks, Brandon. And so I'm sure that people have interacted within Discourse, and this is a good reminder. Discourse is the best location to have the communication around Ape DAO communication. And so if you're on the ApeCoin website, there's a discussion at the very top. If you click that, it takes you to Discourse. And I actually just pinned to the very top. It should be coming in. It says, please leave your questions here. If you're in the audience currently and you have questions, you have concerns, this is 1 hour. And so we will have an opportunity to think about this like a comments and questions, or maybe like a parking lot where we can even address questions later, whether that's a special counsel, whether that's Cartan. We'll make our best effort to facilitate that. And I'm so excited to get to Matt on some of the iterations, your experience going through, but also communicating on some of the things that you've seen other DAOs do.
Totally. Yeah. Thanks for having me, and thanks for letting me kind of be up here and speak on behalf of the community. I've been a ape owner since the minted 4. Immediately sold a solid gold ape for 1.1 ETH within 24 hours because I thought it was an amazing return. Thankfully,
Wait, sir,
still.
did you mint a gold ape?
I did mint a gold ape, and
okay,
I sold
sorry
it for...
to hijack this, but congratulations. We got to have a whole nother space to talk about that. Congratulations.
And I sold it 24 hours later, so it's okay. Just holding on to my
just
guy
so that
right
everybody
now.
knew. We didn't always know where this was going.
I rugged myself, man. So I've been around this scene for a little while. I was excited when I saw ApeCoin come along and the possibilities that it might have for gaming, metaverse, all those kinds of things. So when it all fired up and the forum went live, that was it was fun, to kind of see a community being built up around this in a way that was not just, say, a Discord forum and things like that. But one of the things that I felt was super important early on was I'm a bit familiar with some of these proposal processes, like the Ethereum improvement proposal process and Bitcoin improvement proposal, and really quickly seeing that much of what the Ape improvement proposal process was modeled after was those things. But it seemed like maybe the community, maybe wasn't as familiar with this. And Discourse is an amazing piece of software. It's super in-depth. It's got crazy amounts of options, but it really has to be tuned just right to whatever community it's a part of. And so, when the improvement proposal process went live, literally, I think the next day I submitted one to reorganize the forum to something that I think would better fit the community, help newcomers, and as well as organize the sort of efforts underway. So, seeing a proposal be able to move from idea to draft to, in voting, and then something that's live, and it resonated pretty well and was awesome to see because, then it went up for vote, and that is the forum that you see today. It was just everything that went into what we know now as AIP7. So that was really fun. It was cool to see that part of the process. But what's crazy to me is, as a part of that, I really discovered firsthand that, hey, it's a non-trivial amount of work to put something together that is robust and sort of explains the whole rationale behind why you want to do something. And I mean, I was just proposing that we move some forum categories around, but it took...
Literally, for anyone who hasn't been to Discourse, like you were saying, like, basically some minor improvements to make it more efficient in some ways.
Essentially, like, imagine that Discourse is just a bunch of forum or folders and subfolders. And so it was about like, hey, why don't we put this one in this folder, and why don't we open up a new folder and do it for that? And that was the gist. And I think that what I've seen over the last couple of months has been some really great ideas, some that probably wouldn't take much to implement, some that would be extremely challenging to implement, some that probably should take months of debate because its implications would be far-reaching and very deep and challenging. And so, the things that I want to kind of toss out there and for us to be thinking about as a community and as a DAO is that the process that we have today, like, is it working for everybody? And, is it something that we feel like is going to execute our, greatest hopes and desires? Where I'm at with it is, I see some really big and meaty proposals, like the one from Immutable X about moving ApeCoin to an L2, or some activity to an L2. That's big. That's deep. That has huge implications. But as it is today, you know, it has to abide by the exact same rules. And so, in an idea mode, it's like 7 days, and then you go to draft, and it's like you get 7 days, and it just feels like the sort of bar that one has to reach for the simplest of ideas to be the same as the bar for the most complex ideas, and kind of held to the same scrutiny and timeline of voting. I think there's room for improvement here. I don't think that everything should be sort of set to the same exact standard. And so if the amount of work that I have to put in to propose, some folder rearranging is the same as, moving to a different chain, that's both bad for the simplest of ideas, the ones that could be easily implemented, and it's bad for the ones that are hardest to implement, because we might not be putting enough effort around the diligence required to know that hard thing is going to pass muster. So, I've got some ideas I'd love to kind of to share with how we might accomplish this, but ultimately we probably do need to start thinking about these proposals as different beasts. Some are going to be simple grants that would take like a day's worth of conversation back and forth to say, hey, yeah, that looks great. And some are going to take months, and we should definitely adjust our process accordingly.
And I think that's a really good point, Matt, because I think that also helps frame how the special counsel kind of thinks about how we kind of review proposals and processes, right? So something that maybe is smaller in size and scope or scale, we tend to let that go to the community, let the community decide, let the community vote on those proposals. But where it has a big impact, that's like where we tend to spend our time and our debate and our discussions, is making sure that the high impact, the things that are going to impact ApeCoin and Ape Foundation the most, is where we're spending our time, and and all the other proposals, the community can be a part of that process. But I think where we're best leveraged is on the high impact ideas.
Totally. And frankly, that's all it should be, right? It's like, if there's a simple little idea, like, let's not waste the time of the council. But when there's something that could have like long lasting and perhaps legal ramifications and things like that, then it needs to take more time, have greater scrutiny, and have a much keener eye placed towards it.
I think sorry.
Go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, so I love that, because I think it's, in some ways running a DAO is we can learn and draw experiences from how people operate public companies. And some of it is obviously bureaucratic, but its intention is to really protect the interests of the minorities, or to make sure that everyone is informed. So, in public companies, you have this concept of, the extraordinary general meeting, where you have to basically, if it's a major decision, you need to have sort of a waiting period. You have to send out a prospectus and really explain something if it has a material impact that then in this case, the shareholders vote on. And this is the same really here, if you think about it, right? It's like, if it's a material decision, if it has a major impact, then we have to make sure that everyone is fully informed before we even go for a vote, right? And so that process does take longer. Not only the scrutiny, but also the voting process in and of itself is one that there's more time, as opposed to, you just have a week to decide because it's, for instance. So I think that's a very good point, and something I think we should really consider, both on the sort of faster decision making and also ones that are much more material.
Yeah, so I totally agree. I mean, these things that that could be very simple, we should find a better way to kind of fund those ideas as grants, and not require this sort of onerous process to do so. I'm super inspired by what's going on in Nounsdale right now, specifically with this thing called Prop House. And it's something that I would like to bring to ApeCoin. And so probably in the next couple of days or so, we'll put up an AIP that would be to explore something like Prop House. And so for the folks that might not be familiar here in the group, the idea is really simple, which is that ApeCoin has a large treasury. We want to be able to fund projects that are going to promote ApeCoin, or to help members of the community, or to just, I don't know, be really cool projects that could be beneficial to the Web3 and crypto communities. And the way that it works is they run these sort of auctions, and they're sort of a reverse auction. And they say, hey, we're going to put up $200,000 worth of something. 10 projects are going to get it. Submit your projects, and whatever gets the most votes gets the grant. It's very simple. And what's cool about it is, you can sort of scale up or scale down the funding, which might, increase or decrease the scrutiny that you need to place towards a certain idea. And so for the purposes of ApeCoin, I think it has a really huge potential benefit in that so many projects that probably don't require, literally it took me a month for my forum restructuring to go from proposing it to draft to then vote. It's crazy. But something like that could have taken no time at all, submitted, gotten funding if it needed to be funded, and move on. And we can start, kind of letting 1,000, flowers bloom. We can fund lots of projects that might all, contribute to the DAO one way or another. And then for the projects that are going to take months and diligence, we can wait. We can hit pause, and we can take our time while not sort of like inundating the community with just proposal after proposal after proposal that all have to meet this like crazy standard. So I'll be excited to kind of bring this forward in the next few days.
I also really like that idea because it also empowers individuals to participate in the DAO. Because my suspicion is, and my assumption is, that there's a lot of folks who want to participate and want to build with ApeCoin, but they might be individuals, they might not have a company, and so they don't actually know how to, or they feel intimidated, right, by going through the AIP proposal process. And something that's a lot easier and more flexible and more efficient, where if we did something like the Nouns DAO sort of idea, it would make it more accessible, right? And so you could have actual individuals from the community come in, participate, continue to build with ApeCoin, and then for anything, a larger, more strategic idea like moving to another chain, or creating a marketplace, whatever it might be, those need to be big operations where they need big teams around it in order to build and scale it. And so I think that there's that suggestion. It's a good way to delineate between individuals who want to contribute to the community and then actual companies that are sort of trying to build within the Ape ecosystem.
And I guess I would just like to add to that I think we at Cartan put the same level of diligence on, like Jay was saying, on anything and everything that comes back past our desk. So while the discourse thing would have been an easy fix, bar some testing internally to make sure it goes off without a hitch, but we did a very deep dive into MG, made sure he was of sound character and sound mind. Probably didn't need to do that, but ultimately wrote a 4-page analysis report on the whole thing and went from there. So if we can streamline that, our team is 100% behind that idea. It frees us up to really do bigger deep dives into a lot bigger projects, so that we can pull out all the risks and all the ramifications, whether it's operational or treasury or financial, and then just highlight those pieces and let the other ideas kind of bubble up a lot faster and get into vote mode a lot quicker.
I'm so excited that Matt brought up Nouns Prop House. I feel like Prop House is one of the greatest, most exciting innovations in governance in Web3, and I really truly believe that it has the potential to completely transform DAOs.
Yes, yes,
absolutely.
So, I guess I'll just quickly talk through how we surfaced the amazingness that is the Nouns Prop House at ENS. And so we have 4 working groups. Each working group has a handful of stewards. So we have Carlos from Metaphor, who is a large delegate, who came along to a public goods call, and he kind of pitched this idea of building a prop house for ENS, and I'm really excited by that idea. And so basically he just came to request funding to get a demo up of that from those stewards. That basically got approved, in one call. He's then surfaced a post to the forum for transparency and is going about building that. And so that's kind of the first step, which is the difference between navigating ENS through a smaller working group as opposed to surfacing, even just getting that request to build a demo through a DAO-wide proposal process, which, as we've kind of talked about, can be really lengthy. So that's the first step. And I think that's also really important to kind of keep the momentum that builders have when they are struck by inspiration, when they have things. Kind of the flip side of having really long-term time horizons with DAOs is that so much can change in such a short amount of time with the talent that we have in this space. So it's really important to try to empower and enable builders as quickly as possible. And then when we're talking about rolling out our version of a prop house, it can be used by each of the working groups. And basically the way that I see it is that we have a meta governance working group which deals with all of the governance issues for the DAO. And all the large governance proposals would be kind of overseen by that working group. And then primarily ecosystem and public goods are grant giving working groups. And so they could have, it's actually crazy if you sat down you could literally just hold a Twitter space where people just come up with, different proposals for how to use a prop house, but basically the different kind of subsets or communities within the Ape community could each have a different prop house. Different kind of stakeholders within the community could each have a different prop house. You could be so experimental, and the threshold for getting over the bar can be really low in terms of kind of a time perspective, or it can be really high. And so I think what's so amazing about prop house is that the small grant giving kind of expedited process is really great, but I imagine actually that it could also be used for really large grants as well. So I hope you can tell I'm so excited about it, and I think that kind of the adoption or incorporation of it within the ApeCoin DAO would be a huge one.
Am I wrong to think and just get excited about the idea of an ape tank?
No, that I think you nailed it, Herb. I think that sounds really great. And I mean, can you imagine? You could literally just have a prop house where you could almost raffle out seats, and people who are in different communities, different holders of apes and things like that could be judges on a particular prop house in a given week or a month. And so I don't know, but like I said, the design space is huge. I think
we're gonna have Jasmine because she was on Real Shark Tank, and so we'll say Shark Tank as featured on Shark Tank.
I think on both sides of kind of the equation as well, which is builders and the people coming to the DAO to request grants, but also the other side, which is community and the people who are able to get involved in that decision-making process, which also is really empowering for community members to have a say and to kind of participate in many different ways and find something that is sustainable.
Amazing. And I honestly believe that if we are iterating like this, then the other side is a little bit of accountability. And Captain Trippy, I know that that's something we've talked about. I'd love to bring you in here and just even have those the sort of questions we're having around this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Herb, thank you for hosting this tonight. For those that don't know me, I am Captain Trippy, and today is actually the 1-year anniversary of me purchasing the
Happy
Captain Trippy
birthday!
avatar. Yeah,
Happy birthday,
absolutely.
Captain Trippy!
So I was in the community before that, but that was a big event. So I'm excited to be here and love the discussion so far. Would like to. We're short on time, so I won't repeat what Matt has said, but I just wanted to echo in agreement pretty much everything that he said, and then also wanting to get to a place where we're encouraging people to build I, with a $3 billion treasury, that's no small amount. But the more we build, the more networks effects we have, the more just the whole ApeCoin DAO treasury likely, increases in value, which it's not all just about that. We want to, to build things. And I think there's something there for encouraging people to build, and also us as a DAO getting to a place where it's okay for people to fail as well. And finding that balance of being good stewards of the money, because we have to be good stewards of the money, and holding people accountable, but also doing things that encourage innovation and pushing things forward. I'm extremely excited about the DAO overall. Being a month in, and looking at, out of, the arc of time, if you will, and seeing like how long this thing can go. I expect this to continue on past my lifetime. And that's one of the things that got me into this space. Hearing Alexis's daughter in the background, I too often have my kids hanging over me as I am on spaces and doing things this time of day. And really, my kids are what helped me get into the metaverse and to where I am today in this space, watching them interact on different things. And so that's why we're here. And so I'd like for us to think long term and build. A couple of points that I really want to bring up. One is trying to navigate the really big ideas and knowing and this is a balance, because we can't see behind the curtain, and I don't think that anybody on the board sees behind the curtain of what Yuga's doing. However, big ideas such as like an Ape marketplace, finding that balance of like, do we need to submit an AIP and build this big marketplace, or is this something that Yuga's already working on? Other big ideas such as like an ape chain, I know can be extremely controversial, but I think education can go a long way, on different reasons why we might be on a layer 2, or all these other things that are out there, and what that means for, blockchain gaming, for our ecosystem, all those type things. And so there are some really, really big ideas out there that I think there needs to be some further discussion, just overall education on for the community. And that could maybe even that's something in an AIP where, there's a certain amount that goes towards somebody building certain amounts of education for the space. And, that helps bring in new people as well, educating them. So those are some things.
Captain,
Yeah.
can I ask a question? What do you
Sure.
think is like the best forum, or like the best way to like engage with the community on some of those educational pieces? Because I think like ultimately, I think we're all kind of aligned that we want that to be the goal, and discourse was intended to play that role. Where people can have those conversations, but it doesn't necessarily seem like that's really where people are going. So I would love to hear your thoughts on how better to communicate, some of those bigger ideas, like what platforms to use.
Sure. Absolutely. Maria, thank you so much for bringing up that point. I think we're all dealing with just an overwhelming amount of inboxes in so many different places. And I think for discourse, I think it's another one. It's a new one that for some, and it's just not a place that you naturally are. So you have to think about going there. And so like there's some really cool things that are happening in discourse. But, is it worth a discussion on Ape DAO having an official Discord? And the reason why I say that is because I'm not in any of them yet, but it seems like there's been several. There are some different Discords that are popped up. That's a place that most of us are already engaging, and so I don't know. Maybe it's like we have whether it's in Spaces or in Discord chat, somebody come in that's like an expert in with an L2 and just kind of educate on different things that can happen. But I think that there can be some more fluid discussion happening in other places besides discourse, and then going to discourse for, as it becomes more official and do those type things, but a place for people to come together and just like hash out ideas. So those are some of my ideas.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more on that. That's a solid suggestion. I think that we can definitely learn from the DAOs that are already out there, or the projects that are already out there. I think of Ethereum when I hear that, and the fact that like Ethereum's improvement proposals all go through GitHub, but the discussion is sort of like, sort of casual, conversation is all happening in this area called Ethereum Magicians, just another forum. And, in our world, a Discord could certainly serve that purpose where, hey, we're going to put our suits on and write these proposals, and that all can go to discourse. But if we can have sort of more lively, synchronous, lightweight conversation in another place and work through a bunch of stuff, that has a lot of benefit.
Thank you, Matt. Yes, I absolutely agree with that. Marty, is that kind of the direction? Is that kind of some of the ideas you might be thinking?
Yeah, that makes sense, because it feels like discourse isn't the right forum to have like more synchronous conversations, because of just like the way that it's structured, where you have to reply to different comments, and Discord is probably better for more fluid, more synchronous back and forth. And so I like that idea a lot.
And Brandon from Cartan Group, is there a possibility to bring you in as a moderator, for example, to a Discord, or to have some energy?
I think it's so I think a lot about communication, right? Slack versus email, and Slack being, oh, you got to respond instantly, or you have a free flowing conversation. Email, that's fine. I'm going to send an email. They don't have to get back to me right away. I kind of think of it like that with Discord and discourse, where Discord, you can have these very lively, very free-flowing conversations. You can pop in and out as you see fit. It's got a great mobile app. It's got a great desktop app. So I think it definitely would improve the level of conversation. And then once an idea has been sufficiently explored and many people have talked about it, then someone can take the next step and put it into discourse for an official, hey, this is where we're gonna, this is it, this is our idea, final comments. Of course, going back to MG's or Matt's earlier point, if it's an easier proposal, we should be a bit more light touch on it. If it's a bigger proposal, then we obviously need to do a lot more due diligence and identify risks and legal implications and everything else. So I love the idea. I think it flows great. We would be happy to help moderate and steer. And the other thing that we do is we build a lot of analytics in the background to track how the community is growing. And I can tell you it is growing. So that would just give us another data point to sort of aggregate this information together and validate that we have a minimum viable community, and that minimum viable community is on a growth trajectory.
I really love that. And so there are a combination of like community-led DAO or Discords, and I think it's up to those of us. I started one early on with Wave, and so on those of us to figure out, how to propose something together and to merge and to provide that. So that's really exciting. I think leaving this meeting is something that we can do, and really also being clear that discourse has its role and Discord can be complementary to that. And then there's also Twitter, and so we're trying to make the best of all of this. And so from Twitter, I have a question from Chimp Daddy. And so the question here is, what is the big goal right now? And this is more for the board or the special counsel. What is the big goal right now? How are the day-to-day processes? How many days, months, or years is the board thinking in, for example? And what can and that we'll start there. And I pin this to the top of the space so you can all see it.
So maybe I'll start, but I think the rest of the board, obviously, one thing is that we have weekly meetings, right, that are organized to discuss, the topic. Of course, we have a chat channel where we discuss in real time many of the activities and questions that come through. So there's daily activity there. So I would say that, it's not a full-time job, but it certainly sometimes can feel like it. at least for I think for most of us. The goal, as put out just as a reminder again, is really to further basically the mission of ApeCoin, which is basically to expand Web3 culture. And the main point here is to really deliver and create more adoption of ApeCoin as well as part of the goal. And whether we use this through Grant Foundation, whether we encourage people to develop on that, right? And to that point, I think when Captain Trippy was talking about sort of a forum to present ideas, actually the highlight on this is another way is to also for a forum to present ideas that are currently adopting ApeCoin, for instance, and what they're using it for and how it works. So people want to have updates because the vision here is to have a whole plethora of products, services, games, metaverses, whatever people are building out there, use ApeCoin in one form or another. So that's really the big mission here, to sort of drive adoption and utility for ApeCoin, at least from my perspective.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, we have another question. Oh, sorry, go for it.
Sorry, I also just want to comment on that, just piggybacking off of that. And I think that there's different ways for the community to engage, right? So the only way isn't just through voting on AIP proposals, right? Everyone who owns ApeCoin is actually like an owner of the Ape DAO and the Ape Foundation and the mission that we have. And so, we can actually really be the evangelists and utilize, like, show people how to utilize ApeCoin. Like, so for example, my firm Sound Ventures, we're working on a pop-up shop on Shopify for Father's Day. And one of the big things that I'm working on right now is, okay, how do we actually accept ApeCoin as one of the checkout methods? I'm not sure if people will actually use it, but the fact that you can actually bring utility and usability to the coin is one of the more important things. And so the more that the community can actually be evangelized to go out and start, implementing and deploying and like using ApeCoin, I think the better. And so when we think about, just the time horizon that we're thinking in, it's okay, how do we actually build infrastructure or tools that will drive, the next 10 years of ApeCoin adoption? And so that's kind of the framework that I think about it in.
And
Yeah,
if I could just quickly, sorry, go ahead, Amy. Go ahead, Amy.
Yeah, I completely agree with Maria and yeah, around the time frame here is years, right? It's there's day-to-day operations in days and weeks, and I mean we'll talk a little bit more about that because actually hiring for a couple of full-time contributors here, but in terms of inspiring, evangelizing, attracting some of the best teams in blockchain and outside of blockchain to build experiences and tooling utilizing our ecosystem and coin and token, I think is that I see that as kind of like one of the primary responsibilities for this community. This community can be building, but we could definitely also be evangelizing, and I would argue that evangelizing will actually increase like the our reach, and so would absolutely recommend that. And I think Maria touched upon some of the types of experiences, but I think like and others like including sort of DAO tooling or NFT toolings or intersection tooling at the intersection between like commerce and NFT usage, NFT gating. All of these can be funded by our grant program, and that would be super exciting. Or like NFT marketplaces, etc. When I'm talking with teams and I mentioned like, oh, have you considered applying for a grant with the ApeCoin DAO? Most of the time I'm hearing like they never even heard that was a possibility. And so I guess like in my mind that right now where we are stage wise is evangelizing as like a primary drive for our community. And so very super for me it's like super, and for a lot of us that is really exciting.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Amy. And yeah, I think that you had something to say as well. I'm not sure if maybe we'll give you one more try. Yeah, but we are closing down. Yeah, looks like.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, I wasn't sure whether you were referring to me because I was just sharing something earlier. I thought so. Just broadly, I mean, I think as we close down, I guess in closing thoughts here. First of all, I thought this was extremely valuable, and I know Maria has been really at the forefront in trying to help us push through these spaces on a very, very regular basis. So thank you, Maria. and the whole board. I think for here, the big takeaway, improving efficiency, segregating material, things that maybe don't require the same level of scrutiny versus the big ones. I think that's a really good thought process, and totally on board with that. And as a whole, I'm sort of excited about delivering and broadening sort of the use case for ApeCoin. And Amy mentioned the one piece about how sort of broad adoption that doesn't necessarily even require sort of just having a grant. That's one way to do it. But there's plenty of examples out there where companies have just adopted ApeCoin. And in so doing, in receiving ApeCoin, don't just receive a currency in which they can, make money maybe, but also they become a member of this community, and they can actually choose to sort of vote on things or join the community and participate in that. So I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, I think really early on in this conversation, the idea that this had started out with apes, but is much more inclusive than that. And so, as we finalize this, if there's any last thoughts, Alicia, Captain Trippy, Matt. If not,
No, I would just
maybe
encourage more ideas. We just, there's billions to spend in this DAO. Like, the community is responsible for it. Let's spend it. Let's get crazy. Let's find some really cool ideas. Let's put it out there. Let's get the community to chime in, and let's find something that works for everybody. Let's have ideas that fail. We shouldn't be shooting for the moon every time. We should be doing things that are interesting and crazy and fun, and find ways to grow this community, and to find new and interesting things to fund.
Yeah, I think when Matt was talking, it made me think of this idea of the map is not the territory, but I think that maps are really useful for just like creating boundaries and containers for people to operate in. And so really thinking about maybe even just kind of knowing what you know now based on the last couple of months. If you had to start again with all of the knowledge that you had, what would you do? What are the important places in the map? How do people navigate it? How do people go from place to place? All these sorts of things. And then really just kind of going from there. But yeah, I think it's a really exciting time.
One tactical thing I'm going to throw out to the community here is that with a treasury as large as ours, we are inviting projects, teams, funds who would like to help us think about treasury diversification, and also how do we do that in conjunction with generating yield. How amazing would it be if we were able to actually give a number of grants out from the yield generated from our treasury. And so definitely it's like an area that I'm super interested in. I think we've starting to get some proposals coming in to the AIP, but would really welcome more ideas and proposals.
And to support with that, Brandon and Cartan are actually looking for some open roles. Brandon, can you share those with us?
Yeah, so we're going to post some open roles. So we'd like to find some a community officer or head of community. We'd like to hire some communication specialists so that we can bring some comms in-house and make sure that the narrative is consistent across across the team. And we're also open to hiring some engineers so that we can build or at least support building some of these features in-house, or at least give support to teams as they start thinking about what they want to build, which is kind of the last piece, which is we are also opening up office hours. So if people want to talk to us, we are more than willing to jump on a call and help collaborate an idea. We have a bunch of engineers already. If we need, my background is software development, so if anybody needs some support or just somebody to bounce some ideas off, these office hours are perfect for that. So over the next week, I think we will repost the actual job roles, and we will open up office hours. But I think just anybody can reach out to me on Discourse through a private message at any time if they're struggling or they want some help or they just want to talk about something. I'm an open book. I don't mind talking. I love helping people. So by all means, reach out.
I have to say this too. I know everybody in the NFT community is afraid of Brandon because he has this regular human face on, but trust him. I'm willing to go there because I've spent time with him, and I just want you to know that it's not what you think. He does know the community, you guys. I promise you, Brandon does know Web3. He does get NFTs. He's not this crazy outsider.
I guess just to speak to that, I do own some NFTs. I do separate my personalities from here's my personal professional kind of personality, and then I also have a few other accounts that are like my pseudo anonymous account. I kind of follow Bala J's law of hey, have a pseudo anonymous account, have a personal account. I mean, I got to navigate both the traditional financial world and the non-traditional financial world. So I like to keep a bit of separation between those things and keep them private for the most part. But yes, you're absolutely correct. I do have some heaps and NFTs and everything else.
And any questions, comments that weren't addressed? I know that I have some DMs. It's actually really hard to go back and forth and try to moderate, but I promise you they will be addressed. And it was called The Parking Lot, but a combination of Twitter. If you tag me, it's a great opportunity. I'm going to be in Discord in the BAYC club. And so I just wanted to finish by saying happy birthday to PP Man. And for anybody who was just having a great time and enjoying this space with us and is wanting to contribute, thank you so much. Thank you for all the special council members for making time. Thank you for community members. And it's just a big day all around. And so, super grateful. If there's any last words, now's a great time. Otherwise, everybody go enjoy the rest of your day.
See you all at Ape Fest.
Oh my
Ape
gosh.
Fest.
Absolutely. We'll be there.
NFT
somebody
Let's go.
make an AIP to make Tropo do something crazy. Somebody is one of the.
We're gonna do. I'm gonna submit an AIP to make Tropo do the limbo at Ape Fest.
That's funny. That's funny.
Have a good night, everybody.
All. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks
See
all.
you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks.